Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Livestream from Korg. I'm James with Korg, and I hope you guys are all staying safe, secure, and healthy. We are here today with a little bit of vintage vibe. Today we're going to be going over the wonderful new SV2 Stage Vintage, the latest upgrade to the Stage Vintage line. Of course, Stage Vintage being a very best-selling product for us for stage pianos, uh, almost 10 years running. And now we've got the SV with more. As you can see, I've got the panel here. We'll be also looking at the editor a little bit and having a little fun with that. A lot of user requested features, of course, in both the hardware and the software. And let's just start by jumping in and listening to some sounds. One of the first things we definitely want to check out is how many pianos actually come in the SV2. So it's like a lot. So as you can see here, we're going to start with just a basic piano. We've got sorry, this is the German Grand. And a lot of these are derived from the Kronos. We can scroll right down through here and we can see the next one, which is the Italian Grand. And of course the Japanese Grand. Austrian Grand. And then we have some new uprights. This is the Japanese upright. And the German upright. Now, one of the things you'll always notice about the SV2 is that we've got this great panel that's laid out for live use. It's very easy to write with. Like, so for example, if I wanted to just go ahead and add a little bit of different reverb to that, I can go over here and choose that reverb. And I can increase or decrease that reverb. Change that reverb to a spring reverb. Or if I wanted to add something like, for example, an electric piano, I could turn on and turn off spatial effects. I can turn off modulation effects. So here, you can add a phaser. Or a different phaser. Or perhaps a flanger. Again, very easy to get around on. Over here on the left side, you have your EQ that goes over everything. So you can easily turn that on or off, or just dial in a little bit more bass, a little bit more treble. Going back to a piano here, we can go with the EQ off for a second. And then adding some EQ. That's do a little bit of like a boost on the low end and the high end. Just go through some of the presets. The first bank is sort of a mismatch of everything, so you can experience what's actually happening here inside of the SV across the board. So the first one is going to be that German grand. The second one is going to be the Italian, and then the third is going to be that electric piano that we were using already. Fourth is a little whirly action. Clap. A little wah to that maybe. Oh, he's a beautiful FM piano. You also notice when I change sounds, nothing gets interrupted. That's a smooth sound transition, and that's also very important for live, because you don't want anything to stop. You don't want to change the sound and go, oh, we got to wait for that to load. So we have that technology built in where you can go from one sound to another and seamlessly transition as you're transitioning your songs. And if you're just joining us today, hi, welcome. James with Korg, and we're here checking out the new SV2, checking out some sounds, checking out the editor. Lots of other cool things. Talk a little bit about the difference between this and the original SV1. Here's one big difference. So now we have some layering. The SV2 actually allows for 3 different timbres at one time. You could do a split and a layer at the same time. Right now we have a nice little layer going on. And then, a good example of a split. And for your original SV owners out there, important to point out, you can change the split point. So if you hold the local button here, you can choose your split point. Go up one more from there. So now I'm going to kick a little bit into the editor and use that as a good jumping off point. So obviously there's a lot of great interactivity with the panel. You can do things very quickly on the fly. I mean, that's what live is all about, you know, moving at the speed of live. You want to be able to dial in things in very quickly. But if you do have some more time or you're working with this in the studio or at home, the editor librarian opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So what you have here is you have a panel that lets you really dial in some stuff very quickly, very effectively. You could save your favorites very quickly. All the things that you would absolutely positively want to start shaping a sound are right here. So you're working from left to right. You've got your EQ. You've got your pre-effects, which are things like your treble boost, vibrato, wah, and you have controls for those as well. You have an amplifier section, which allows you to add a little bit of overdrive, and there's several to choose from here. Right here in the center where you would expect it, you have your favorites panel. Over to the right is where you have your sound selection, and then over here you have your modulation effects, which would go towards the end. So you've got your phasers, your choruses, your flangers, your rotary speakers, and then over on the far right, finishing it off, you have your reverbs, and then there are some presets that show you a little bit of the layering and the splitting. But in the editor, you get to go a little bit deeper. So here's a quick shot of the editor. You may not be able to see my mouse, but what we're going to do here is we're just going to take something and we're going to add a layer to an existing piano. So you can see the three different parts here. So right now it's going to be the main, the Hamburg Grand, layer 1 and layer 2 split, and I have no idea what that alarm is, so please disregard. And I'm going to change the split, the layer, to something else. So I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to go to synths, and I'm going to go to Aerosonic, and now we can turn that on, and we should be hearing. I think my tea is done. The show must go on. That's kind of cool. So what you're automatically seeing is that there's a lot of stuff that you could access through the editor, so you can dive a little deeper into the PCM. Of course, the SV2's got 10 times the PCM of the original SV1, and there's a lot more to play around with. A lot more pianos, electric pianos, whirlies, all the standard stuff, but then there's all these other great synthesizers that are under the hood. We could add another pad to this right now. I'll change this out. Or if you do want to do a split, you can do that as well. You click over to split, and then you can find things like your electric basses. As I mentioned before, you can have 3 different parts, so you can then put a layer on top of that. So here we go. I'm going to put in that cool synth from before. I like that very much. That was Aerosonic. Okay. So now, up top, you have your layer very easily. And you can change octaves. You can do whatever you want. So like, let's say I want to play a little closer form. Also in the editor, you have a lot more control over the effects. So again, panel makes it basic, so that you can do things very quickly. And then if you want to dive a little bit more, you can go in and you can change much more of the effect parameters. So here, for example, we can decide on a hall, do that, and then but you can choose things like time size, the damping, how much roll-off you have, the pre-delay to that, the total mix. And you'll notice that everything I do automatically goes right into the SV1 as well. It is a duplexed editor, which means that if you touch the panel, it's going to register inside of the software, and if you touch the software, it's going to register inside the hardware. And you can also choose what parts get that. So I'm going to make sure that all parts are set for effects. And they are. So you can listen to a few more sounds. Obviously, a lot of banks going on here. You have 8x8. To change a bank, all you really have to do is hold, and then choose what bank you're in, and then choose a sound within that bank. So now we're in the piano bank. We'll skip that for a second. We'll go into the electric piano bank. Here's the first of a couple of roads. And I'm going to go ahead and add a flanger to that. Give it a little fun. If you want to get really crazy, we could add an amplifier to it as well. So what it would sound like played through an AC30. Here's an electric piano with a nice trem on it. Mark 5. Dyno. Here's that whirly again. Here's that FM. And here's a hybrid. Going into another bank. We're going to the split bank. Nice little walking bass. Kick up the bass a little bit there through the EQ if we want to. split point just by holding the local button and hitting. Once again. One more up from there. If you are joining us for the first time, I'm James the Korg, and we're checking out the all-new SV2 Stage Vintage Piano, the update to the very, very popular Stage Vintage 1. We now have 4 models in the line. Interesting, very important to point out. So right now we're looking at the SV2 73 SP. So this is the 73 key version with the speakers built in, those speakers by K-Array. I am going direct right now so that we're getting the direct signal, but you could turn these are automatically on. You could choose to turn them off if you want to with a switch in the back. I know that is a big question that comes up. So yes, you can defeat the speakers. When you plug in headphones, it also can defeat the speakers. We have 2 versions of each. So the SP, or the speaker version, comes in an 88 and a 73. And then, of course, we have it without the speakers, which is the traditional SV2 73 and SV2 88. And they all come with our RH3 weighted hammer action. It's Japanese-made graded hammer action, heavier on the bottom, lighter on the top. So you get that great weighted feel, whichever version you're going with. And like I said, we're just going through and checking out some of the sounds here, going through the banks. We're playing around with the editor a little bit, seeing what we can get under the hood. We're playing around with the effects. We're doing some changes on the panel, as you can see here. We're going to keep going on some stuff here. So let's go down here. What do we got? So these are some organs and claves. So let's go through and do percussion organ. So. Bigger cathedral. Bigger cathedral. Famous piano. This is the M1 piano. full control of that chorus here on the panel, as you can see. A little thicker. Let's go to phaser. There we go. Dial that in a little bit. Bring up the low end a little bit. Take out a little of the mid. Add a compressor to that too, why not? Ooh, very nice. And then of course you gotta have a harpsichord. Moving to the next bank. Here's some layers. Stuff that's pre-made for you. If you're just joining us, we're checking out the sounds and the editor on the new SV2. I'm James with Korg. Hope you're safe and well. Smooth sound transition. Make sure there's no stops in the sound whatsoever. Great for live, of course. Nice little spacey pad on an electric piano. So if you're just joining us, you might be asking, well, okay, so let's say I wanted to change the volume balance between that layer. You can do that in the editor. We'll switch to that right now. So the editor communicates very well with the SV. Obviously, it's duplex, so anything you do on the panel shows up in the editor and vice versa. But so here's a great layer that we've stumbled upon, and let's say, for example, I wanted to change the level between those two. So I do have this dark pad here down at the bottom. You can see me sort of grabbing that button when it turns yellow. And just like that, you can go ahead and go in, and you can change that volume relationship. You can keep it nice and subtle. Raise that up. You can also change things like octaves. You can decide whether or not they get bypassed for effects. Right now, so I just put this up an octave for what I just did. Strings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a treble boost on that for a second, get it nice and bright. That'll really help it cut. Just want it off, just go ahead and shut it. Round it out again. Let's go back to those pianos for a second, because of course pianos are super duper important. In the first bank of pianos, which is bank number 2, has them all. You can go through. So we'll start with the German piano. And here, there's a couple of things going on. The first you can see in the editor is that piano is using 2 timbres. One of those is the piano samples itself, and then there's the underlying real experience samples, RX, from things like our PA series, Kronos, things like that. These are the things that you hear underneath the piano that make it sound so real and vibrant and organic. So here you've got things like the pedal noise. Turn that up for a second. So as I push down the pedal here, you can hear that kind of opening of the damper, of the felts. Here you can hear the mechanical noise of the keys, all sampled separately. And then, of course, because it is on a separate layer, it means you do have control over how much of it you hear or not. So there's a lot of customization options here. So we bring this down for a second. Put it underneath. It'll be subtle. compared to the piano samples themselves. Or you can really bring that up for that noise. Just to lower the top one, just to give you an idea how that plays together. Does open up a lot of possibilities, and because every piano is sampled to its full decay and everything, you really grab the characteristics of all those different pianos. There's really no piano out there on the market that has more pianos on board, more different types of samples than the SV2. That also comes from it having 10 times the memory of the original SV, and it's put to obviously extremely good use. If you're just joining us, I'm James the Korg, and we are looking at the SV2 Stage Vintage, the update to the very, very popular Stage Vintage piano series. We're also taking a little bit of a dive into the editor, as you can see from my screen, to show you a little bit of what you can do under the hood. One of the biggest things and one of the most user-requested features for the SV was to be able to do your own splits and layers, and also to have separate split points, so you can choose where your split points are. That's all embedded now. You don't need the editor to do the split point stuff. You could just choose your split point right when you want to. If you want to dive under the hood and do things differently with layering or splitting, you can do that. The editor and the hardware work perfectly together. It's a very harmonious relationship. I'm going to play a couple more pianos here to show you. This is the Italian Grand. Japanese Grand. Austrian Grand. Japanese upright. German upright. Rock piano. Tack piano. Just gonna throw a little amplifier on that. Get a little gritty. If some vibrato would be nice. Maybe a little slower. All super easy to dial in. Next bank. All the all-important electric pianos. Mark II. Mark V. Cool. So then, yeah, once again, if you're joining us, I'm James with Korg. We're here with the SV2, and we're checking out some sounds. We're checking out a little bit of what we can do with the editor librarian. We're checking out the new feature, which is, among many other features, the fact that you can have 3 parts at a time. You have total control over those parts and what they do. It could be a split and a layer simultaneously. So, 2 sounds up top, 1 sound at the bottom. And we've been doing a little bit of that in the editor librarian. I'm going to build another sound for you from scratch right now because I think that'll be pretty cool to do. So I'm going to jump into my first bank here with my first sound, which is the German Grand. Great grands from things like the Kronos and the Grand Stage, all built in, which is very cool. Jump to the editor here, and don't leave yet. That slide came up early. And then here's the editor, so we can choose what we want to do. I'm going to make it a, first I'm going to look at a layer. So here I'm going to go in onto the first layer. You may not see my mouse, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to choose the synth category, fantasy, and I'm going to use Jurassic Pad. So let's see how that sounds. So I'm adding a layer right now. Okay, cool. Do that. Come back here to the volume on the second part. We'll raise that volume up a little bit so we can have a nice balance between the grand. I want that introduced into the effect, so I'll flip that switch off. Cool sound. We do have also separate control over the parts. On the panel, you have a master EQ, but each part also has its own EQ, which is really cool. So under the hood, you can do a lot with that. So for pads and stuff, you probably want to drop down the bass a little bit, raise the middle and the treble, let it kind of stand out in the mix, and then we can go to our split. We could choose our split point here. Take that down to A3. And then we could choose what we want on the bottom. So I'm going to choose the choosing screen you might not be seeing right now, but I'm going to choose a acoustic bass. I'm going to choose, actually let's do an electric bass, finger bass. Then we're going to turn that part on. Change the volume of that part, bring it up a little stronger. Bring up the bass a little bit on that. Beautiful. Went a little muddy, so I'm going to throw down the treble a little bit. And then we've got this really cool split and layer. Still come right back to the panel, and if I want to change things like the reverb, I can do that without worrying about a thing because it all shows up in the editor as well. So turn that to a spring reverb. So now a quick note is the editor works on all of them. You can get either the SV2 SP or the SV2 without speakers. It works across the board with all of them. They all have the same exact engine, so you don't sacrifice anything by buying one with or without speakers. And it is totally free of charge. You can get it from Korg.com. There is another question out there. Can you load the original SV sounds in via the editor? The answer is that there is a file on Korg.com that lets you do that. It does use the new sample sets to put things in the proper place to sound as close to the original as possible, but everything will be in the place that you'd expect it if you are a prior SV owner. You could start from there. You could certainly mix and match, and that's what's really great. It's instantaneous. You load that in, and it just shoots right into the SV2, and yeah. So I'm gonna think we're gonna play out with a little bit of a piano here. For everybody that did join us today, I would like to thank you very much for joining us. We're gonna be doing this stream every week, different characters each time.